happens on my head. It's just.
Hi, this is Night Flight. I'm Judith Kwoba. And today I have such a treat. Sonia Barrett is here from the realsoniabarrett.com. She is an author. She is a public speaker, a documentary filmmaker, and overall a wonderful being that gaps the bridge between the oh fuck.
I like this already.
Hi, this is Night Flight. I'm Judith Kwoba, and my very special guest today is Sonia Barrett. She is a public speaker, an author, and she is a documentary filmmaker. She made the movie The Business of Disease. Sonia Barrett, welcome to Night Flight.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much. Yes, for your audience. Yes, here's my Beam Me Up headphones, my headset. So,
which planet are you from?
We're still trying to determine that.
Okay.
So I'm streaming in from someplace out there in the cosmos, but anyway.
Sonia, I would like to tell you a little experience that I myself had.
Okay.
And I guess we take it from there.
Sure.
Last spring, I went for a checkup, and there was this questionnaire, but that was not given to me to be filled out. There was a nurse sitting there and asking me all the questions.
Okay.
And then when it came to, do you take any medication? I already said no.
Right.
But she had her questionnaire, so she went through all the points. Do you take medication for blood pressure? No. Cardiovascular system? No. Diabetes? No. Blood thinners? No. No. And whatever she said, no,
Right.
no. So then after a while, I said, I take an aspirin once in a while.
You thought, what is wrong with this woman?
So then she finished her questionnaire, and then she looked at me and she said, that is very rare at your age.
I know, it's so crazy.
And for a moment I felt like this pink elephant in the room that nobody expected to see.
Like an anomaly. Yeah. Just.
So Sonia, how did we end up there that we think it is perfectly normal starting from a certain age that we have to take all these pills?
Well, I think that, geez, how far back does this go? But I think that even if we were to look at modern day society, or even, I don't know, 50 years ago or 100 years ago, I think it's just been this gradual process. From you're born, actually, you learn what an old person is supposed to look like. You learn how an old person is supposed to act. You learn what age qualifies as an old person. So the conditioning started from the get-go. And even now, so I'm always laughing and talking about the commercials that I see, because they're so ridiculous, that depict either grandparents, and they always seem old, really, sort of almost decrepit, or they're knitting. I'm a grandmother, and I don't sit around knitting, but they give you this idea in your head of what you are supposed to be and what age you should need to take medication. So I think that most people automatically assume that they're getting older, and so therefore these things should begin to happen, even if they're not happening. they should begin to happen. And so the first little ache or something, oh yeah, well, when you get to be my age, which I've heard people, when you get to be my age, this is what happens. Wait till the aches and pains start. It's so ridiculous. And a lot of times, you know what's funny? I am their age. they, they just don't know that. That is what is so funny. It's you know, yeah, you're that age, and it's like, no, that you want to have quality of life all the way through. But to answer your question, I think it's this gradual programming that happens, and it's acceptable. It's been normalized. It's simply for, yes, the pharmaceutical companies. I think it's normalized for the medical model that we have, but at the same time, I think it's part of the control and navigating human mind, human beings into a prescribed reality, into a prescribed way of perceiving reality. So from even from politics on, it's just this entire stream of someone else telling you what reality it should look like, and you better adhere to it.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that I find striking is sometimes, and this does not only happen to me, it happens to many people. Sometimes you hear doctors saying, oh, you know what? Whatever you are doing is working, so keep doing it. But they actually never ask what
They don't want to
doing.
know. Because it goes against probably everything they stand for. Just whatever it is you're doing, keep doing it. And I think it is such a farce. It is such a joke to think that when someone hits the age of 50, and you know, 50, 60, that like this big hoodoo, like this big thing. And it's like, that's not even a speck in time. It's really nothing. It's just the model that we've created. And yes, and doctors don't want to know when I say to anybody, which I very seldom say that, but I'm on a show and I'll talk about that. But, you know, when I say to people, or anybody finds out that I have not been to what we call traditional medicine or allopathic medicine since 1983, you know, and I wasn't even going before that. I went to I simply went into that area because I was going to have a baby. I was giving birth to my second child. And 6 weeks later, because he was born in December, 6 weeks later, I went for my 6 weeks checkup. That was the last time I went. I went for a 6 weeks checkup, and prior to that, I didn't. So from a very young age, like 18 or so, I had started to, based on what I understood at that time, I had started to live differently anyway. I mean, you know, how I ate, even when I was pregnant, I ate really what would be considered really well. It was just important to me, and I understood that at that stage in my life. So I think those kinds of realizations make a huge difference, and it's had an incredible impact on, obviously, on my life and my body. I am limber. I am like like when I was 18. I don't have aches and pains. I don't have any of that. I cannot even conjure up in my mind feeling like that. And I think it's coming at all of this from a completely different standpoint. And if you started later, if you're just starting now, to me, I say to anybody, just realize that any moment that you begin is great. It's better to start than not. And it requires a lot of research. Yes, it does. It requires you educating yourself in taking care of yourself. And The other part of this is to realize that you are completely responsible for your body. The doctors only know so much, but nobody knows what you're feeling but you. And, you know, we're just sort of programmed that someone else always knows what's best for us. From, you know, doctors to politicians to, you know, whoever, school to work world to your minister, someone else knows what's best for you. So the program is for you to turn your life over to these protocols in place and just follow along whatever the normal is expected to be. Whatever the normal is, that's what you follow. Well, I go the complete opposite direction. And because why? This is my body. This belongs to me. And I think people have to start waking up and coming to that realization. And we're not saying don't go to the doctor. We're saying you can go, but don't put everything on that medical establishment to know completely what's best for you. Even if you get a diagnosis, you research, you explore, because there's been so many times where people have gotten diagnosis and it's incorrect. There's surgeries that happens. There's cancer claims, and it turns out that's not what it was. But then you've had surgery, you've had breasts removed or cut or whatever, simply because you've completely trusted that doctor or that model of medical care. The responsibility is on you as an individual. This is the body you came with. It's yours.
Yeah. And it's not only that you might be misdiagnosed. Sometimes, I'm not saying all the doctors do it, but sometimes they sell you chemotherapy although they know you do not have cancer.
Right. Right. Well, and I think, you know, we deal with a system of part of it is greed and part of it is ignorance. And when people are a certain age, because I'm looking at a situation right now with a family member, but when a person is supposedly a certain age, they're 70 or a little over 70, they take a different stance with people of that age. It's like you've already lived. So, you know, do we need to really put that much into getting you to feel better? You know, okay, here, just take this pill. You know, just take this pill. You're on your way out anyway. That's sort of the stance that I've seen taken with people after, you know, over a certain age. It's like, you know, you're old, you've already lived. Yeah, just shut up and take your blood pressure medicine or whatever, diabetes medicine or whatever it may be. Just take it. Doesn't matter what it does to you. Doesn't matter all the side effects. You've lived your life already. Moving on to the next group, the younger group, that we're prepping for the next level. And it's just constant prep work that happens all along, just constant prepping. And we pass that information on, we pass that behavior on in our families, in terms of your parents. If their model was about going to the doctor all the time, then that person grew up seeing that, and then that, you know, could become their behavior. Some people break out of it, but a lot of times we're following a trend, we're following a pattern of familiar behavior, and anything that is outside of that model of medical care, we don't trust it. Herbs, something natural, oh no, I don't trust that. But over here, my doctor is giving me a prescription for a drug that I know has side effects, but I'd rather trust that than trust, you know, something natural. And the thing is that these pharmaceuticals, They all at some point are derived from something natural. They have just put them through this whole other process that have come up with a compound that doesn't align with the body. And this is something that people really, really need to understand. The body has been designed in such a way that it's self-proficient, and it operates based on what? Its own chemicals. It's a chemical factory, so it produces its own chemicals, which is the hormones. It has its own system, its own way of operating. So what happens is, when something that doesn't align with the chemistry of the body knows that it's foreign. It knows that it's foreign, and now it's trying to either assimilate it or you get rid of it. So that's where you get these side effects, because it doesn't blend with the chemistry of the body. And people don't think about that. That's where the side effects are coming from. The body recognizes this as a foreign substance that is artificial, and it wants to get rid of it. And then when it can't get rid of it, now you may feel better in some areas, then suddenly you go back to the doctor because now you've got a pain over here, or this thing happens, and the side effects start to break down different parts of the body. And the weaker parts of our body is always what's affected first in any situation. The other aspect of this too is that the emotional aspect is really not looked into. It's not really considered now because of all the, what they probably look at as new agey stuff, or with homeopathic medicine and all that. It's coming up. They're trying to sort of look at that, but not really. That's the root of all of the stuff that people end up going through, particularly when people get to a certain age. I often say it's not because you are 50 or 70, your body's breaking down. A lot of that is accumulation of life, of information, of your traumas and your stress, and the many things that you have experienced in your life. It comes to a point where it's accumulated, and so it wants to come up. So the reaction, the pain that you get, or the dis-ease that you end up with, is a reaction and evidence and a signal to something else that needs to be addressed. And I don't know why that seems like it's so woo-woo or so up in the air. Emotions can be measured. Everything has a frequency, measures a frequency. And the body is the same thing, operates, it has a certain frequency by which it operates. And so we're talking about your emotions are measurable as a frequency. And when that frequency is of a certain lower level of frequency, it's going to impact certain parts of the body that's already maybe weaker or compromised.
Many years ago, I was in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
I was in this area that is called, I forgot it, doesn't matter. But I experienced my first AIDS walk.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they had Greenwich Village. Okay, that was mm-hmm. the area. Mm-hmm. And everybody was wearing this red ribbon.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, I looked at it and I thought, who's going to benefit from those ribbons? I mean, other than the guys that are selling it.
Right.
And who knows where that money goes to.
Right.
And but now we have all sorts of ribbons.
Oh gosh,
Yeah, we
yes.
have pink for breast cancer, we have yellow for bladder cancer, and
Mhm.
there is no end to ribbons.
No,
What is going on with this color coding?
it's, to me, it's a symbol. It's a symbol of, obviously, that represents that identity of, whether it be breast cancer, as you said, or AIDS, or whatever that is. But I think what I looked at was, we may see it as, oh, pink ribbon, breast cancer. But we have to understand that there's a whole coding of information behind that symbol, like everything else. Our first language is symbols, and because our first language is symbols, um we tend to easily record a symbol, but then we don't realize that there's a lot of information that the brain gets to pick up that is actually part of that symbol or code, that is represented by the symbol. In this case, we're talking about ribbons, and how the mind then interprets this information, and how we take that in, and how does it impact us, and how does it impact our belief system and our own identity, um, and the choices that we then make. And years back, when I was before I did this film, because I didn't know I was going to do the film, before I did the film, I had written an article called "The Marketing of Breast Cancer, the Pink Ribbon Agenda." And those are some of the things that I was looking at. And your audience can find it on the website still, or even if you Google Sonia Barrett, the marketing of breast cancer, the Pink Ribbon Agenda, you'll find it. Were you going to say something? Oh, did I lose sound? I think. Oh, you just didn't say anything out. Okay.
Somebody was knocking at the door. It's okay.
Oh, okay. All right. So I think that realization about symbols and how our brains are interpreting this information is very important, because now you can't see pink without, that's what I started to wonder. I'm like, every time you see pink, even if it's not a ribbon, this coding has been so drummed in, that pink now in your brain automatically starts to revert to, am I right? The symbol of breast cancer. So you have, all these people, and I thought, well, how is this impacting our brothers, our sisters, our aunts, our children? Everybody now has this coding. And I thought, this feels more like they're marketing the idea of breast cancer more than anything else. This is being marketed. And so you have more fear, you have more people who are scared that they're going to get it. And years ago, before the ribbon, even before the ribbon, my sister-in-law, this is back in the, I don't know, 90s, my sister-in-law kept saying, she said, okay, she had breast cancer. And she admitted, and this is someone that was not knowledgeable at all about any of this, awareness, consciousness, not any of this. And yet she said to me, she said, for years, I would say that I had it. She says, I kept saying that I had it. And she said, I really think that this is what has finally happened. I didn't have it until, no, she did. But she was realizing that over the years, she talked her body into this thing. And I think there was a point there once she got it, and I've talked to other people, it's like once they end up with this illness that they were so afraid of having, there is almost like a relief, because now they have it. Now they have to deal with it. And she eventually, she ended up passing. But I always remember that she told me, because I had no idea. And she told me that that's what she used to do. My mother, another quick story as well. My mother, who was my mother that raised me, my adopted mother, when she died in 1984, I think she was 60, because she was old. She was an older mom, but she was 60. And I remember one of the things, because she ended up with lung cancer, never smoked a cigarette a day in her life. She was a nurse and she did work on the cancer floor. But she said to me, this is when it was really severe and she had it. She said, I used to pray that I would not live to 60, because she thought, looking back at, what she saw in her life, and people at one point seemed to look older, and whatever she associated with 60 was old, and whatever it would come with. And she said to me, she said, I kept saying that I didn't want to, because I didn't want to be a burden on anybody. 60. And she says, I wish I had not said that. And I said, but Mom, you can take that back now. She goes, I don't think so. It's just too late. It's too far gone. And she died like 2 days later. And so my point is that we're hearing people who at the last moment are realizing some things that they have done and said, not because anybody's telling them, oh, you thought no, they're realizing in that moment, wow, maybe this is what I did. There's a realization. So I think we need to take a page from stories like that. And there's tons and tons of stories. There's Anita Moorjani's story, of having cancer on her deathbed, but she was so afraid of getting it and afraid of everything that she created it for herself. And when she got it, she was almost kind of relieved in a way, because now she didn't have to worry about getting it anymore, because she did. But she was blessed to have a realization in a coma, a realization and a conversation, an insight that said to her, you don't have to have this. And she saw how she didn't love herself, and how all the things that led her to that experience. We're calling her family members, because she's going to be gone any minute. And what she realized was just profound. And then she thought, oh, wow. So how am I going to come back in this body though, like this though? And it was this sense of not to worry. And sure as heck, she came out of that coma, and gradually, I mean, it was evident to the doctors then. They saw that her body seemed to be changing just overnight, just suddenly. And over a short period of time, I don't remember now. I was one of the first people that interviewed her years back. And in a short period, all the cancer was gone. We're talking through to her bones. Her entire body was riddled with it, with no hope, nothing they could do. And that realization came to her, and she got it. So many stories, people in accidents where the body, one man, it was, oh my God, well, on the other side, how can I live with this body that's so damaged? And just a change in realization and understanding, he came back and his body repaired. There's so much about us. There's so much about these vehicles. And we have to realize that these are vehicles. These are vessels that we are in. They're not really completely who we are, but they're this vehicle, this biogenetic vessel that we move around this life in and get to have sensations, their sensory systems, and experience things. And I think that all of those things are so significant to us making the changes that we need to change and taking back ownership of these vessels and realize that they are designed to be self-contained. But they need you, they need you to be aligned with that understanding. They need you to support, the bodies need you to support the healing process. But it's hard to do that when you have no knowledge, when you are blind to all of this. But when you become aware, now you can say, okay, what is it that my body needs? What does it need? It might say, well, let's go to the doctor. Let's find out what's going on. Okay, now that we find out what's going on, I have a choice. I can now figure out what are the best ways to move through this. I don't have to own it. I don't have to say, oh my God, this is what I've got. I'm gonna, even if the doctor says you got 6 months to live, there's a bunch of people that they've told that to, and they went on and they've lived their lives. Start to look at that. Don't spend so much time, I would say to people, focusing on the more, for lack of a better word, the more negative side of things. But look, or what do they say? Don't look at the glass half empty, but half full. There's two sides to every coin. And you have to be willing to see the other side of the coin and not just the one side that's been drummed into you. You have to go, wait a second, there's a flip side to this. What's the flip side? Let me open myself to that. And again, realize the preciousness of life and the incredible gift that we've been presented to be here in these vehicles to experience all that we possibly can, all the potentials that we can experience in this life.
Mm-hmm. When you talked about those two specific experiences, mm-hmm. I remember when I was a little child, every time my parents and I visited my grandma was somebody, she just loved to talk about diseases.
Yeah, there are people like that.
And I remember that at the end of the day, when we were leaving, I felt wiped out. Not because something...
Drained.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And up to this day, I'm horrified when people start talking about diseases and dwelling on it. You know what I mean? It goes on for hours and they don't stop. And then usually I walk away. Mm-hmm. So I guess it works both ways. You can drive yourself nuts. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or I will probably get this and that and that and this. Or, and I think I intuitively just walked the other road. I never really cared about my age. Mm-hmm. I didn't freak out when I turned 30, not when I turned 40, not when I turned 50, not when I turned 60. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And why start now?
Exactly. It's like, what is the point other than you're reacting or responding to the beliefs that have been thrown out there as to what you can do? It's like, are you supposed to retire and sit back and again just knit, or do or what, or do nothing, or just play with your cats all day? It's like, no, you're alive. And disease is a conversation piece for many people, just like talking about their surgeries. You get a group of people together and they love to talk about their surgeries, or they love to swap stories on what kind of health insurance plan they have. That's another conversation piece. You know, what kind of insurance do you have, and how their insurance works, and all of that. That's the focus. And you're thinking, really, that's what you want to spend the time talking about? You know, it is is making sure that not making sure that you take care of yourself in a way that where the insurance becomes insignificant, but you want to make sure that when not if, but when your body falls apart, you've got good insurance. That's the model that people are operating by. When you fall apart, do you have good insurance? Because it's going to happen. That is what they're telling us. It's like, it's going to happen. Just wait. Yeah, it's really something else. That conversation piece about and I think people have to be honest with themselves when they are feeling uncomfortable about that conversation. This is not really what you want to do. Is to be able to do like you did. You have to excuse yourself. Excuse yourself and step away. That's basically it. That's not, you don't even have to go, you know what, you shouldn't be talking about it. That don't even, because most of the time people like that are not hearing you. They think you're a problem. They're thinking there's something wrong with you because you're not planning for your future. You're not, you're not talking about what's important. It's like people, I remember when I was working in corporate America some years ago, I remember this one guy came in and he was just ever so happy to share with us that he had just over the weekend bought his burial plot for him and his wife. And they picked out the caskets. And he's telling us about how it looks and how it's lined and how beautiful they were. I think I was in my 20s. I was like, what is this guy talking about? He is like talking about it like he just bought a Lamborghini. And I'm thinking, are you really going to be concerned with how well it's lined when you're dead? Are you really going to be concerned with any of that? The other person that I did interview was Fernando Lopalo, and I've been mentioning him a lot more lately. I mean, he passed a few years ago, maybe like 3 years ago. And I feel blessed to have had the opportunity to interview him at 111, and he died. I think he was almost 111, 12, 13. I think he was 114. And he was so incredibly functional at 111. And one of the big takeaways is he said the only thing that you should be focused on is living. Don't even worry about dying, because if that's the case, then that's going to take care of itself. Focus on living. And that's what he was doing. He said, I do things what people do when they are alive. And he'd written his book, and he was working on another book, and they were shooting videos of him, cooking. You can still see him on YouTube. He's, showing you how he makes his fruit salad. And he is completely coherent, completely there at that time. And my cameraman, which actually we had interviewed him for the film. It never made it in there because it was hard to get Fernando to pin him down to some specifics. So we had to just let him talk. So someday soon I want to release the videos with just him. But yeah, we just like, forget it. Let him talk, let him do his thing. But when we arrived, he opened the door, and my cameraman, I knew what he looked at, but my cameraman thought it was his son that opened the door. My cameraman, he was like 30. He didn't expect a 111-year-old man, to be walking around functional, dressed really nicely. And he was walking a little under 2 miles every day at that time. He was doing workshops. He would get called to do lectures. He was busy. He went back to school and became an iridologist in his either late 60s or 70s. He was totally busy and living, and he did not die of anything. His daughter said he did what he normally would do, and then he slept away. No heart attack, no nothing. He just slept away.
He just left.
He just left. And so people don't have to, if they leave, if they die, people don't have to leave based on some dire illness. The program doesn't have to be in there where you think, oh, something's bad's got to happen. There are people where, my grandfather, he was 105, and this was in the 60s. He had started a whole new family. His first wife died, his children were grown, and he remarried in his 60s and started like a whole new family. So he had 4 more kids. So he had to live till 105. So yeah, he was, and of course this is in Jamaica, it's in the country at the time, so the air is clean, the water is great. They still didn't have electricity. They had lanterns, they used lanterns and so on. He grew his own food. Everything was from the land. They collected the rainwater. There was no acidity. Everybody collected rainwater. That's what they did. And they had a massive thing. You're familiar, and that's what they collected the rainwater in. And so one morning he just slept away. No heart attack, no nothing. He just didn't wake up that day. So I think, people have got to look at those models that are not shared. We get the models of absolute demise and traumatic exits from the planet and all of that. That's reinforced constantly in our minds, and you change your perception, and you begin to change the version of reality, or the experiences and the people that come your way. You begin to see differently, and your choices change. And so many things change, as science shows, is that we greatly impact the field around us, and we greatly impact what comes into our life. Now, this doesn't mean that we're sitting around blaming, because people get very sensitive about that, because we're so protective of ourselves that we don't want anybody to make us think that we were responsible for something that happened to us. Stop it, people. Just stop. I'm like, just stop. This is not a blame game. This is not about blaming. This is about waking up to the truth of your own magnificence and this incredibly self-contained vehicle that you are in, that you utilize, and wanting to know how it works, and wanting to know how your mind works with it, and your thoughts work with it, and the whole system, how this whole system works together, spirit, mind, and body. How does this all work together? And think, the more that I can understand this, maybe the more aware I am of the journey and the choices that I make, and the people that I surround myself with. All of that just becomes more clear. No blame. Just waking up and going, okay, I see more. I see. That's it.
But I don't have a TV. I haven't had one for a couple of years now.
No, you won't even need one. The computer, everything is there.
But I remember that when I had a TV, there were, quite a lot of advertisements for pharmaceuticals.
Right.
And I think the way they market everything is very clever. I have to
Very.
give them that. Yes, I know there is greed attached to it. It's more about money than about help. But the
And
way they,
control.
yeah, but the way they structured it is very clever.
Oh, absolutely. Well, they've been doing this for a very long time. They've been at it for a while. So there's control, you know, involved, and there is directing people's minds. And you get some people that are hypochondriacs to begin with. You get people that are already, you know, emotionally fragile. And even if you're not, yeah, the symptoms, it's like, well, do you have headaches? Or you've been having headaches, you know, constipation, you know, whatever, feeling tired, you know, certain things. And people go, well, you know, yeah, I kind of have been feeling that.
Who
Well,
doesn't once
yeah,
in a
it's like,
while?
who doesn't, who isn't constipated once in a while? who doesn't feel tired sometimes? You know, who doesn't have, maybe occasionally your head has a little bit, I don't get headaches, but occasionally something kind of weird will happen. Who doesn't have that stuff happen sometimes? And so people, you get people that are already on the edge a little bit in terms of how they feel about their bodies or thinking about their health. And those people begin to think themselves into the symptoms. They begin to think themselves into the symptoms. So they throw the symptoms out there and they advertise it enough. There is one commercial here that is aired. And yes, I do. Everybody knows. Yeah, I have television because I watch a lot of sci-fi. There's things there that I like to watch, that I gravitate to watching, because I like to see what the game is showing me. I like to see what's going on in the game. What's the latest trend or thing? And there is one commercial, and I said to my husband, this should be illegal. And it's a commercial where two different or three different versions of it, where the woman is saying, it starts with this music, you know, this kind of soft music. And then it goes to, you see her doing things like she's functioning just well, or she's getting out of bed and putting on her shoes. And then she says that she has metastatic breast cancer. And then the commercial lasts for, like, it's long, and at least a minute, or it seemed like 2 minutes. And they play that commercial so much along with the music that whenever, if I'm sitting there and it comes on, I hit mute. I'm like, oh, hit mute, because the music, it's played so much, it starts playing in your own head. And that's not just with that commercial. There's lots of commercials. And then there are commercials where they use kind of a kiddie type of song, catchy, and then next thing, then it's in your head. And it's like childlike. Or they use cartoons to even for even pharmaceuticals. You see little cartoons, just anything to hack into your mind. And it's so subtle that you don't realize you're being hacked. You don't realize it. People don't get it. And then they take that in some subtle way. You take that in. And these are the things that I think we have to pay attention to. The billboards, you're driving down the street and there's these big old billboards coming at you. And then you glance it, you think you don't really completely read it, but since your brain picks up everything, your brain picks up stuff that's going on behind you and in front of you. Your brain doesn't just pick up what your eyes are seeing. It picks up everything that's going on around you. Obviously, it doesn't throw it all back at you because it would be too much. But this is why when people go under hypnosis, why you can be triggered to remember things that you didn't even know that you saw. Like, you know, say a crime happened or something like that, and you walk by and you glance at a computer screen. You didn't really look, but you glance, but you don't think that you saw it. Then you go under deep hypnosis, and suddenly you're brought back to that moment. And surprisingly, yes, your brain already took a picture of it. It's got the information, so now you are seeing what's on the screen. And so it's fascinating to really see how we're designed, and how you're being influenced. And again, take back responsibility for oneself. I always say, stop leasing out your mind and leasing out your body. Take back ownership.
Do we not trust ourselves enough? Because, I have this thing sometimes when I come across information that is new to me, totally new.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I just keep it on the shelf. I have no real opinion. Is it true? Is it not? Is it murky? Is it whatever? I just keep it on the shelf. But sometimes I notice a physical reaction to information. And that is usually when the information is baloney. And so do you think it's time to get back in touch with that response?
Intuition, your intuitive sense? Absolutely. If we were more in touch with that, we would make different choices. Right now, people are very external. Everything is outside of you. And you're right. And the word trust, we don't trust our internal guidance enough. We're programmed not to trust it. We're programmed to trust, again, something or someone else outside of us is what the programming is. But if we were to get back to that intuition, we would realize that we're always being guided. We're feeling when something doesn't sound right or feel right. And everybody experiences that sometimes. You get a feeling of, maybe I don't know if I want to go. I'm not really getting a strong feeling of going to a particular situation, a particular event. And then later on you might find out, well, there was an accident on the freeway or whatever it is. And then it's like, oh, maybe that's why I didn't feel like going. But this internal guidance is always there. It's always there, ready. And parents in particular, mothers, fathers too, but mothers have an intuition when it comes to their children, no matter where that child is, no matter how old the child is, matters not. There is an intuition. You know when there's something going on, something is wrong, it's the same thing for all of us, man or woman. We have an internal guidance system. And I think a lot of times it seems like, women are known to be more intuitive, but I think it does connect with that maternal part of us, whether we have children or not. It's just there. And so it seems to be a little bit sharper. And plus we're dealing with programming in terms of men and what men are supposed to be and what's not manly, and women are emotional, all of those programs that we hear. Well, that's okay. I don't even care if somebody says women are emotional. Those emotions are tied to something, and we're feeling, and we're allowing ourselves to feel and to tune in. And I think that that's something to be realized. If men were a bit more emotional or tuned into their emotions, I think we would see a much different world in terms of the politics, and in terms of the decisions that are made when it comes to people, mass groups of people, and not so groomed to be, a war and the aggressor all the time. Each one of us have both inside of us, both the male and female. One is always more dominant, however. As women, we have the more dominant charge of being female, whatever comes with that. And that's not just behavior, that's hormones, that's all of those things, that it's a whole system that comes with it. And that's why I identify, I say the male and female frequency is how we're, I kind of look at it. And so I think, all of those things make a huge difference in our health, in terms of understanding this, in terms of owning it, and just opening our eyes more and seeing, you're being told who you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to feel at what age, when, all of that. Somebody is telling you that every step of the way. And it's not to your benefit, it's to their benefit. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas how to reattach to our intuition and to listen to what the body is signaling?
I think that comes naturally when we actually make that decision to go, you know what, like they're listening to this show and somebody might say, you know what, I'd really like to do that. That's the first step, because your brain hears, your cells hear, your body hears, right? Everything that you just thought. And so everything is really kind of at attention, waiting now for you to follow through. So that is the first thing, is deciding, you know what, I really would like to be more tuned into my intuition. I would really like to trust myself more. And then you begin to listen. You begin to feel as things show up. You don't just dismiss it. You begin to feel, oh, wait a second, I feel. A lot of times we tend to feel something in our stomachs, in our bellies, as this is the core. We tend to feel that. Some people feel it by their heart. The point is, when you are feeling that, when you have to, particularly when you have to make a decision, you want to stop and you want to tune into that. You want to say, okay, what is this feeling? What am I feeling? And you want to be honest with what it is that you think you're feeling. Not try to push the feeling to what you think the conclusion should be, but to actually stop and to just feel which way this pendulum is swinging. Which way the pendulum is swinging. And if you feel a discomfort, a knot in your chest, if you decide to go left when intuitively you felt like you should go right, once again, stop and trust that, because it just doesn't go wrong. What you're feeling in your heart, what you're feeling in here, it just doesn't guide you wrong. And you just go, okay, you know what? I really am feeling right. And when you decide to go right and that relief comes in here, you feel relieved that you went in that direction. You will know. So it's all of those little things that are the big things. And it seems so simple, but it's all the things that we ignore. So that is what I would say would be the approach to go with, which is what I do with myself. So I'm just telling you what I do and what I share in workshops and so on with others.
Yeah, and you call it the program. I think we are guided to constantly overrule with our mind what our body is trying to say.
Exactly. You do. Yeah. You're programmed. I say programmed because it is like a program in a computer. It's become a learned and normal behavior, and it is your normal for operating. So so it becomes this programmed response, like this automatic response to have it, override what your inner guidance is telling you, what your body is telling you, to override that. And yeah, so I think that's, those are all important factors. It's like when we are feeling tired, but we go, oh, we have so much to do. You're feeling tired, and then you go and you drink coffee because you're forcing yourself to stay awake, and the body naturally wants to shut down and take a break. But and that's all part of the health thing too, is that we have to understand that the body reboots itself. And when you feel agitated in front of a computer or anything like that, your body needs to take a break to reboot like a computer. It needs to reset. But what we do is we override that signal from the body with caffeine, with anything that will keep us awake. And actually, it is to your detriment. It does affect you. And also, not only does it affect you, but you are not as clear as you think you are, as opposed to if you just went ahead and took those 20 minutes. Dr. Ernest Rossi wrote a book called The 20-Minute Break, The Ultradian Rhythm is what it's called. And I suggest anybody out there to read that book. But yes, you override it with coffee. But if you take that break and allow your body to reset, it resets your mind, and you can see much clearer, and you come back. And I think people out there can prove this. They've done that, where they've when it's just too much and they finally step away. And maybe you think, oh gosh, I got to go to bed. And you get up, and suddenly, wow, you're able to write more. You're able to solve a problem more. You're able to do, the things that you spend 2 hours on because you were forcing yourself into that space and overriding it with caffeine. You spent 2 hours, but then when you got ready to do it because you're fresh, it took you 15 minutes. Those are the things that we have to start paying attention to. Yeah.
Let's say we decide to go down that road, that we listen more to our body, more to our intuition. What would you say is the part of our own imagination that can help us to get better overall?
The part of our imagination that would allow us to get better overall.
Does imagination play a role here?
Imagination does play a huge role. I mean, everything started with the imagination, with the mind. And I think that if I were to say anything about imagination in this context, it would be for people to imagine a different life, a different version of themselves, a different feeling, a different experience. And with that imagination is to sit with the feeling. What would that feel like if my body were in a healthier state? What would it feel like for me? And then close your eyes, and you are imagining. But you're not only are you imagining, meaning you're not just observing an imagery, but you're feeling that which is being imagined. And by that I mean you're imagining what it would feel like. Oh, so what would I do? Well, if I were feeling my optimum, oh yes, I see myself, I'm traveling, and then you're feeling what that feels like, the laughter, the this, or where you would go, the class you would take if you were feeling better, the book you would write, all of those things. You start to create a new picture, a new what should I say, pattern, or a new blueprint, for your brain to see that this is where we want to go with this. Also, it's important that you do something different. That's where, it allows the brain to create new neural pathways The more things that you grow your brain, the more new things that you do instead of the same stagnant situation. It's the same thing over and over and over. I always just keep say simple things like, if you always turn left in the same route to go to work, how about trying a different route? Even that for the brain is something new. It's a new experience, a new pathway, and you're learning how to, oh, I've always wanted to sing. Oh, I've always wanted to learn how to play a particular instrument. All of those things can be incredibly healing for a person's body, for your mind. It sounds so simple, but it's what the body needs. It's what it wants. It craves all of these things. And so we can find the simplest ways to begin to do that. If you have a family and all that ever happens is you come home, you work, nothing really new on the weekends, or you do the same thing over and over. How about coming up with something new and different that the family will do? Because believe it or not, that's choking everybody in the family too. The same routine over and over. To create a healthier family and to create a healthier, whoever it is, the parents, to create a happier, healthier experience as well, then the parents need to do something different, whether it be together. If you're single, you do something different. Oh, go to the movies by yourself, something different. It can't be that you're constantly taking care of someone. All of those things are very, very significant. You spend time with yourself, do something for yourself. And that, if you have children, you're teaching them that. You're showing them how important those things are, and not just food, clothes, shelter.
Yeah. But what you just described, that is not only working in terms of our well-being and health, that is a recipe for turning your life around completely.
Yes. Turning your life around, living a more enjoyable life. And we're not saying that you're not going to maybe have some challenges, but it's how we view those challenges, how we interpret those challenges, and to not just sit in our challenges. I remember times in my life where, as a single mother, I would have, like $5 left. And what do? I'm like, you know what? The house is clean. I've done this, and whatever. I am going to take this $5 and I am going to go and enjoy myself, just whether I'm walking on the beach, whether I'm only able to buy myself an ice cream cone. The whole point is you find a way to make that moment joyous for yourself. You don't have to have a whole lot of cash, but that in itself starts to open up the possibilities for you to have more things come your way, and not just simply going, oh man, all I've got is $5. It's how can we interpret that moment differently? How can we, and that's what I was doing. How can I interpret this moment differently? Okay, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and I'm going to take myself, I'm going to buy a cookie, whatever. I'm hanging with myself. And there are free things all around. There's different things that's going on that you can go to if we start looking at those things. But all of those things I find to be incredibly healing and incredibly important to our well-being all the way around.
What you just described, a difficult financial situation. I guess most of the people can imagine what that is like.
Oh yeah.
And but I always found that the calmer I was, and the less I drove myself nuts. I mean, you can go bonkers over the fact that you only have $5 left. But it always turned out that the less I worried
Stress.
about it, the better I was able to navigate through that.
Absolutely, because you're clearer. That's where the intuition, the guidance, all of that starts to be able to show up more. But when you are bombarded by the distraction of, oh my God, this is what I have left, then that becomes your whole focus. And that's it. You can't see anything else. And then now suddenly you're lost in this. Now you're feeling all down and depressed about it. Yeah, no. I mean, I know I've had from $5. There were times in my life where having $5 left was just like an amazing, great day, as opposed to 25 cents. You know, so so it's all of that, and I have certainly lived the gamut of all of that after a divorce and so on. And I get it, I get it. But what I realized too is that all of those experiences pushed me into wanting to understand more about this life, about this journey, about myself. It was my divorce, coming out of that marriage anyway, and getting ready to go through a divorce, that propelled me into these kinds of discoveries. It was my need to understand this thing we call life. With no background or anything, I just thought there has to be more. I thought there just has to be more. I need to understand this. I need more of an explanation. Where am I? What is this? And that drove me. And I think that sometimes, like our situations, we can turn all of our situations into an opportunity. I feel, everything is an opportunity, but you have to understand, what that allow that opportunity, what that is to show up for you. You have to allow that to show up for you, and just be open. Be open.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You briefly mentioned sci-fi movies and
Mm,
TV series. I
mm,
like them as well. And
mm,
I have to say, we see a lot of superhumans in those TV series, like The
right.
Gifted or whatever.
Right.
Do you think that in general we are going towards that?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it's all of this is who we are. What we think we are right now is just an aspect of what we are. And it's this constant change. It's like a flower that is just opening and it's opening and it's opening, and it's just blooming, you know and we are constantly in bloom. And I think we have to remember that when we think about the human experience, we are here to experience all kinds of possibilities of what being a human being could be. And so there is no limit to it. And at some point, as we can see with the expansion of technology, we are seeing that the only way that these scientists are able to create these various new kinds of technology is because the human mind is changing, it's expanding, it's opening more and more. And the more open, the more we are accessing of what is possible, that's displayed in terms of what we see human beings creating. And so it's an opportunity for us as individuals to recognize once again that we are so much more. And intuition is certainly part of, in a way, that superhuman sense. It's just a small part, but we have to grow it. We have to make it so normal that it becomes sharper and sharper and sharper. People might say, "Oh, you're psychic," but actually, everybody is actually tapped in to something more, but we're distracted by the limiting the limiting way in which we've been taught to operate. So we're distracted by all of the external operations, externalizing everything, and we are not really taught to go within ourselves and really tune in. So the intuition part of it is like a small part of something that is going to get grander and grander. There's so many things that they're realizing that that's a possibility in terms of human beings and in terms of human body. The body is actually very pliable, but it all takes its cue from the consciousness. Right? So depending on where the consciousness is, where that awareness is, everything is taking its cue from that. And we can only be what we are according to the limitations of our awareness, of our perception. Wherever our perception is, whatever the distance is of that perception, we are only operating within the boundaries of that limitation. Why? Because we can only experience what we can accept as a possibility. And if what you can accept as a possibility is so narrow and so limiting and so limited, then there is no room for your brain is not getting the message of expansion and, wow, let me show the individual more, because your brain already has access to everything. It's connected, sees everything, but it filters what we will see and experience according to the limitations of our perceptions, according to what we can accept as a possibility. So yeah, so there's lots, and that's why we hear what seem to be anomalies of people who are able to do certain things. And we've heard over the years about what is that again? It's oh geez, slipped my mind. It's a very simple word and slipped my mind. In terms of oh my gosh. Oh, it's not mind reading is not what I want to say. I don't know why that word is just slipping my mind. But anyway, to be able to see into things that are going on in other realities, in a bigger picture. Like I'm here, but you can see something that's going on in Egypt or wherever. You're able to see things going on in different places. We have that ability. We have that opportunity.
Do you mean remote viewing?
Thank you. Could not think of the word remote. Oh my gosh. Yeah, all of those things are true, because the mind is not locked into one place like we think. We think it's in our heads, but it's not. Our mind is not there. It's not trapped in there. So so sorry. This person I really needed to connect with, I have to let her know that I will call her back. But yeah, those are all things. Hearing, super hearing, sight, moving objects with our mind, how we connect with each other, telepathically. We have to step away from this idea of things being so, oh my gosh, unbelievable. Oh, that's just ridiculous. No, it's not. Mm-hmm. It's not. Yeah.
So in other words, we already are the technology, and we do not need to merge with machines.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, you don't. We are the technology. This is a piece of technology. This is a piece of technology. Oops, sorry about that. I don't mean to be rude.
No, that's okay.
It's okay. I just needed to let her know that I will call her right back. but yeah, we have to realize that when we talk about technology, this body is technology. This body is a highly advanced, you can't even describe it, biological vehicle. And so, yeah, so once we start to realize that more, I think it'll make a difference. Yeah, I think it'll make a difference. I don't know why my phone is doing that. It'll make a huge difference.
Do you think that there is a strong push for transhumanism right now, and has been for a couple of years, that they try to do it before we figure it out, that we have the technology?
Well, anything that comes to the surface now is because it's been long in effect. Things, it's been years of working on something. It's not like they just started or anything like that. These things have been going on for a long time, for many years. And once it becomes more mainstream conversation and you're hearing about, scientific discoveries, it's simply because they're really more closer to releasing those technologies. That's the only reason why they start talking about it. And then, over time, they gradually prepare people to accept it. I remember when I kept talking about this many years ago. And we would see it in commercials when they were using, I remember there was a vodka commercial and they used a female robot to advertise it. And I kept saying, I said, don't you people see this is how this is being introduced to you? It's gradual and and you don't realize it. So everybody's think, oh, it's a cute commercial. No, it's introducing these concepts to people. And so now that's like not a big deal. You see that commercial, we're so used to it now, but it's called gradualism. Everything, it's the frog in the pot, the water boiling, and that's how human beings are sort of prepped for behavior, for trends, or for change. It's gradually presented to them. I remember there was a movie some years back, a Steven Spielberg. It was a mini series actually, and it was called Taken. You remember that?
Yeah, I saw that.
That was at the time like really new holographic reality, things that were, they created this whole holographic experience and nobody really knew, right? That was all at that time. Like now it's not. People are now more exposed to a movie that will show that. And that is how it happens. Our phones, we started out, gosh, for those of us who come from the time of rotary phones, then touchtone phones, or there was one phone in the house with one really long cord, and then gradually we move into the idea of cell phones. We saw that on Star Trek. And then, in Star Trek and other shows introduced those concepts to us. We will have teleporters at some point. All of those things, they eventually will happen. It's just the way it is. It's part of this human, call it evolution, expansion, movement forward. And what happens is we fight to hold on to, the familiar. So when we come onto the planet, what is familiar to us and what is normal to us is the way things were when we got here. Now and the slight changes that might happen, we can accept that. But after you've been here for so many cycles, I like to call it, and certain things start to come about, you're not ready. And so there's some people do leave. There, it's just outside of the scope of what they can really deal with. But we fight to hold on to how things were when you got here. Now, why is that important? I find that to be extremely important because when we each arrive on the planet, when we arrive here, we have no idea that what we are now experiencing has changed from what it was maybe 50 years ago. So everybody ends up being okay with what things are when they get here, not knowing that either life has been reduced to this, maybe we were flying and doing other things, but nobody remembers, because what gradually it changes, and that change becomes acceptable. So now when we try to introduce the possibility of human beings being more, oh, that's crazy. Well, what if that's what we were, and then we've dwindled down to this, now we're going back up again? That's something to realize. But everybody comes on the planet, and when they come on the planet, that is their normal. And kids that are born now, kids that will come in 50 years, the changes that you and I might be fussing about are things that will be their normal. And then they accept it. That'll be, now in terms of the transhumanism, that kind of stuff, I've always talked about that. I am on board. Not that, I think for some people it may serve them. It may serve them. Oh my goodness, what day are we on? Thursday?
Yes, it's Thursday.
I am so completely off. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's another appointment.
You have to be somewhere.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, Sonia.
Today I just completely spaced on the time. I completely spaced on it. But yes, I have to meet with the person. That's another person calling me, and I have to, so I do have to call her back. I apologize for that. But yes, so this has been really, really great. And I hope that your audience finds some stimulating thoughts in what we talked about today. Yeah,
I think so. I definitely did.
yeah.
And so, okay, this was Night Flight for today with the wonderful Sonia Barrett. And we see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I wasn't sure if it was going to be an hour or 2 hours. So